We got some things we need to discuss that go well beyond the tactics. Let's get into it.
And blue is the colour. Essien! Drogba! Lampard! That could be the
championship! Greetings! Welcome back to Couch Critic with me, Dennis P, for what is traditionally a Chelsea match review and more specifically a tactical synopsis, but we're not going to be doing any of that for this particular video. We're going to be focusing on some of the other things around the club, asking some of the other questions that need to be asked right now and get them answered. But before I get into that, I do have to let you guys know that I do have a sponsor for the show. They go by the name of Major League Socks. And fellas, if you ever want to walk in the footsteps of greatness, you know what to do, man. Hit them up. The link will be in the description. Okay, let's get some of the housekeeping out of the way. Chelsea drew Brighton away, and Hakim Ziyech was a goal scorer. Fantastic strike. And it was equalized in the second half by Webster. In this match review, we're going to be focusing on three things, but we're not going to be looking at any sort of like tactical analysis. We're just going to be looking at the club structure and everything that surrounds that. We're going to start with the board. We're going to look at the management, Thomas Tuchel and the staff, and then we're also going to look at the players to try and get my own assessment as to what I think is happening on all those levels and whether or not Chelsea are in a position where they can fix that. Okay, so as we look at the Chelsea board, there are certain things that we need to consider. Obviously, Chelsea are a club that are very ambitious and want to be winning at every level, every competition they're in, they want to win. And whether that be from the youth system, the women's game, the men's game, obviously the expectations are extremely high. And obviously that comes down from the board, but not only just the board, but the owner. The owner wants the success as well. He's putting all the money in, and he wants to see this club be successful in every competition we're in. With that, the expectations come a lot of challenges at the board level. Like, we want instant success all the time. And with, when you're chopping and changing the managers every 2-3 years, every 18 months, you're chopping and changing the playing staff to suit the new manager, and you still have the dead weight of the players that were not successful under the old regime, and you're trying to shift them up. That's a challenging job, like, how do you move Ross Barkley? How do you move Danny Drinkwater? How do you move Bakayoko? All these players that were bought for a particular style of football that haven't been able to play within the squad, and now, because they're on wages of like over 100K a week, how do you move them on and bring in players, that A-list players that the new manager wants now? So, Chelsea's wage bill is obviously astronomically high. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we can't move players that no longer fit the style of football that we want to play at the club, or the style of play that the manager wants to play. And, you get the likes of, just dead weight that can't be moved. And until they run down their contracts, it's like, you're bringing in players for the new manager that may not be the A-list players because you can't afford to, put them on the wages that they desire based on the fact that, like, you have all this other dead weight that is just like, around your neck, So I think that is part of the struggle, when we're talking about bringing in players to, back the manager and like make sure that Thomas Tuchel is not, the latest casualty of the managerial merry-go-round at Chelsea is, how do we bring in these new players when we have so much players that represent dead weight at the club, But having said that, there have been a lot of missteps at the board level that have contributed to the dead wood that's been at the club. I mean, right now there's a lot of talk that, in the media, in, Chelsea circles, as to whether or not Romelu Lukaku was indeed a Thomas Tuchel signing, or if it was just a board signing, bringing in these marquee names, these high-priced marquee names, young talents, to appease corporate sponsors, Nike. Nike needs to have the best players in their kits. We need to have players that, can sell jerseys and whatnot. And, they only give us, the 40 million or 40 million pound or whatever it is a year based on the fact that not only can we be successful, but we can also attract the best talent in the world. So, there is a hunger from the board level to appease our sponsors on that level as well. And, I don't know, maybe the problem is that we're not necessarily addressing the needs of the manager and the style of football that the manager wants to play before we're addressing the needs of the corporate sponsor. There was talk a couple of years ago, that Yokohama was going to be helping Chelsea buy a Japanese star. I can't remember the name of the player. I think he ended up going to Newcastle and just flopping. And, there's lots of talk in the media at the time that Chelsea were trying to buy this guy to appease the corporate sponsors, just because that's a market where they're trying to tap into. And with Yokohama on the shirt, it made sense to try and go after, a player from that region to be their marketing tool. And these are the types of missteps. Granted, we didn't do that, but these are the types of things that are happening every day at the club. We're not buying players that fit the particular style of football that the manager wants to play. We're buying players that fit the corporate brand. And, when you get down that road, when you start doing that, you start seeing all these fissures and holes within the club as is. And I think the board have a responsibility to not only appease the corporate sponsors, but first and foremost, make sure the football is being brought into the club and, is basically in tune with what the manager wants to do. And I don't know if that's happened over the last little while, mainly because of the fact that, number one, we're always chopping and changing the managers, but also due to the fact that the players that are brought in aren't necessarily the guys that actually suit the style of football that the manager wants to employ. So I'm wondering whether or not the board is having more say in player acquisition than the manager, who is basically not a manager, is a head coach, a trainer. That's the title that they've given these guys right now. It's not manager. You're not managing, the football operations of this club as, previous managers like Sir Alex Ferguson, Wenger, like whoever, like Jose Mourinho and his pomp. Like those types of signings are no longer happening anymore. Now you're being brought to the club to, work with the playing staff that the board and their scouts and directors have assigned to you. And I don't know if that's the best way to fulfill the commitment and the expectations of winning all the time, because you can buy as many marquee players as you want. If they don't fit into a philosophy of the manager, are they going to get the best football? And we're seeing that right now, unfortunately. We're just seeing a bunch of mismatched players that have high profiles and whatnot that don't necessarily meet the needs of this, or meets the needs or the standards of the manager that we have at the club right now. And until that stops, until we start finding players and buying them with the intent of them playing for the manager, the style of football that Thomas Tuchel wants to play, we're going to be going through this year after year after year. Now, at the managerial level, the head coach level, the training level, I think we have one of the best in the game. I think Thomas Tuchel is a tactical genius, a guy that has a high acumen when it comes to assessing a team and putting them in positions to win games. I think that he's easily one of the top 5 managers in the world right now, if not the top, just in terms of like what he's been able to get out of a squad that hasn't really been assembled in his image. He's come in in less than a year, and he picked up the Champions League, the Super Cup, and he has Chelsea, competing in all competitions once again. The one misstep that I think that he's kind of taken on since he's come on as Chelsea manager is he hasn't really brought in somebody that understands the Premier League or understands Chelsea Football Club. His staff is his staff. And as much as I feel like we have a brilliant staff and a brilliant director of that staff in Thomas Tuchel, I think that when you come into a club like Chelsea that have these expectations and you come into the Premier League for the first time, you need somebody that's a little bit more experienced and understands the run-ins. I mean, Chelsea, obviously we had all sorts of problems in December and, fixture congestion, injuries, COVID, all sorts of things. Just having an experienced head, an experienced Chelsea head on your squad, on your staff, would only help navigate that a little bit more. I mean, somebody that has been through the Christmas period and understands the demands, the rigors on players and whatnot, who understands what it means to, be down to bare bones and have to play at a frenetic pace, and match the pace and power of the Premier League in his own. I think that only comes through experience. You need somebody that understands what that run-in's all about. And, unfortunately, Thomas Tuchel does not have anyone on his staff that's been through this before. So he's extremely green to this process as is, and there's not really anybody at the club right now that can speak to it for him in a manner that, allows him to, rotate the squad a little bit differently. It's just basically they're learning on the job right now. Whereas if you have somebody like, say, I know we're going blasting the past right now, but somebody like Steve Holland, who went through different managerials assignments over time, you can see that he was able to help that particular manager navigate, the tough periods that come as a manager in the Premier League. And it just feels like this is his first go around, Thomas Tuchel, and we're seeing that there is a little bit of naivety there. Obviously, I'm not discounting the fact that we had injuries and we've had COVID and whatnot. And the Premier League, the FA is definitely not giving us any help in that regard, that's for sure. But just things like he said yesterday after the Brighton game that Chelsea look extremely mentally and physically fatigued and they need a couple days off. But at the same time, he's saying that and he's playing them, he makes his first substitution at the 80-minute mark in the last game. And, the idea, the assessment and the actual action is completely in opposite, at odds with each other. You're saying that the squad needs to be rotated a bit and you're playing the exact same players match after match after match. And running them into the ground, and there's no congruence there. You're talking about physical fatigue, and you're playing guys 80 minutes before you even make a substitution for fresher legs. In my opinion, there seems to be a bit of a disconnect between what Thomas Tuchel is telling us, his assessment of what's happening in the squad, and the action he's taking with the squad as well. So I think that needs to be worked out as well. Obviously, he's never been through a Christmas period before. He's never had to manage, the injury crisis and the COVID crisis at the same time. And it seems like it's a lot, when you're going through your first Christmas period as well. So there is something there that needs to adjust. But I also think that, the ability, the things that I loved about him at the beginning of his tenure at Chelsea was the fact that he was able to bring people in from the cold and use the entire squad. And, the harmony around the squad was excellent at, right from his inception, right to, right through the Champions League. We had everyone involved and everyone felt a part of winning that cup. And right now it seems like, all the chopping and changing that's happening right now, there seems to be a lack of cohesion within the squad. There seems to be a lack of understanding of what we're trying to do on the pitch. And there seems to be, there's just no chemistry, all the chemistry has been taken out of the squad because Thomas Tuchel is looking for, the right formula. And, he said in another pre-match or a post-match presser that it's just next man up. Whoever is healthy, whoever doesn't have COVID is basically put in the lineup, and you don't necessarily have the training, and you don't have to have you don't have to win battles in training to get into the squad right now, because it's so thin. It's just basically, are you healthy? Can you play? Good, you're in the squad. And I'm sure that's been a very, very tough period for him to navigate. But I really do think that if we're going to get to the next level and get through this, this malaise of football, we need to start looking at what is our preferred lineup and force feed that for the next 4 or 5 games, regardless of what the outcome is. If you think that your front three should be, Mason Mount, Havertz, and Werner or Lukaku, one of the two, then force feed that. Allow them to find the chemistry on their own, and then you start ushering in the auxiliary players to fill in where you can. But as of right now, we have absolutely no chemistry with any of our attacking players, and it's showing on the pitch right now. I didn't see anything that resembled any sort of attacking intent in the last few games at all. What are we trying to accomplish? Obviously we have players playing minutes that they normally wouldn't if we had a full complement of players, but at the same time, we have to be able to, forge a system of play that works with the squad that we have. And, that Brighton game was a glaring example that we haven't been able to do that. We didn't look at any point like we're going to score a goal at any point in the game. Obviously the Ziyech goal was basically just out of nothing. He just hit it, and it was a fantastic strike, and he found the back of the net. But in terms of our overall system of play and whatnot, I didn't see anything that resembled Thomas Tuchel football. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact of the rotation of the squad, not allowing players to gel together, and not forming any sort of chemistry. And those are the types of things that I think that Thomas Tuchel needs to improve. We have to think about not only the rotation of the squad, but also assimilating your preferred lineup and getting them up to speed with what it is you want to do. Until we do that, I think we're just going to be continually spinning our tires trying to find the right system of play and the right players to fit in it. But with that said, the players have to take the onus on themselves, and fight through this tough period on their own. I mean, it's been an eyesore watching our attackers on the pitch the last little while. And it's not because, they're not talented players. It's just that they look completely out of form right now. Every one of our attackers, no matter who you name, looks completely out of form, completely void of ideas in the final third. And, that in and of itself is an indictment. We spent a lot of money on attacking players the last couple of years. I mean, probably upwards of 300 million, when you look at like Lukaku, Havertz, Ziyech, Pulisic, Werner. I mean, we can go on. There's so much has been spent on our attack the last little while, and we still don't look like we've assembled, a collection of players that understand how to work with each other or play together and whatnot. So I'm at the point right now where I don't know what to do. Like, it seems like the problem with the squad goes not only from the players' lack of intent to take on what Tuchel's trying to instill, but also just the semblance of the players. And that goes back to the board, back to the scouting, goes back to whether or not we've looked at this this player acquisition thing from the right perspective, and have we given the consideration to the style of football that Tuchel wants to play. I don't know if we have, to be honest, because the players that we have at the club right now don't necessarily resemble the football that I recognize under Thomas Tuchel. I mean, and I can start right at the top with Romelu Lukaku. Like, Romelu Lukaku is not the type of player that Tuchel's ever worked with. You look at any of his stints as manager at Dortmund, at PSG, like the attackers that he uses aren't out number nines. And I know I've been saying this pretty much for the entire season. This is probably the first time that Tuchel's worked with somebody that's an out-and-out number 9, old school number 9, a guy that, like, maybe not a hold-up kind of number 9, but a guy that, like, wants ball to feet, doesn't want to, use his movement to get into great areas all the time. Granted, I'm saying this knowing that, like, Lukaku has worked on that aspect of his game immensely the last little while, and it's showing in some of his movements in some of the games. There just hasn't really been a connection, but at the same time, his default is, sit in the middle of the pitch and wait for the ball to come to him and then try to do something with it. But I digress. I really do think that Thomas Tuchel hasn't really informed the scouting staff enough about what his playing style is about and what his playing staff should look like. And beyond that, whether or not the club even have the ability to bring in the players that match, his playing style right now. Right now, we don't necessarily need any more B-list players. We need to find A-list players to fulfill, the holes in the squad right now. Granted, I understand that we have Chilwell and we have Reece James out, and for whatever reason, like, we don't have anything in behind those two. I mean, we can say what we want, but Azpilicueta and Alonso just do not possess the same sort of, like, dynamism as the likes of, Chilwell and Reece James, the ability to, like, get up and down the pitch. That to me, that area of the pitch is the most intense. It requires the most, versatility. You have to be able to score goals. You have to be able to put in the crosses. You have to be able to defend. You have to be able to get up and down the pitch. And, when you think about those particular attributes, you cannot assign any of those to Alonso or Azpilicueta. Maybe goal scoring with Alonso, but even that's been waning the last little while. Everything else, they just don't do that well enough to, be in the position of wingback at the club. Yet they're being played week after week after week after week for lack of, option. And again, like, all of this just comes down to, again, player type. We have a system of play right now that does not suit the players that are at the club right now. Ziyech was bought to be a winger. He's not the type of guy that you can look at to be an auxiliary number 10. He's not a wing back. He's an out-and-out winger. And, we're asking him to play in a position, in a role that is not conducive to his style of football. Same for Mason Mount. Mason Mount played out of position for pretty much his entire Chelsea career. As with Lampard, he had him out on the left flank, and he's done okay out there. Like, it's not to say that he can't play there, but it's not his preferred role. Everyone knows that Mason Mount is a number 8, a guy that is uses his energy and his box-to-box presence to influence matches. And I don't know playing him as a left winger or number 10 is his most suited role, and it's showing in his performances the last little while. He can't find his football right now. Maybe it's down to fatigue, but it's also down to the fact that he's not played in his preferred role because of the system of play that we have right now. So I think that what we're seeing right now is a mismatched squad, a squad that has been bought with a different philosophy involved. And now we're trying to coax a different brand of football out of players that can't deliver it. And it's becoming a problem. It's becoming a problem. When we don't have our A-list players available to us, do we have the depth in squad and the versatility in squad to still play that style of football and get the A-level performances like we were getting, in November and, the early parts of the year? That's something that needs to be answered, and I don't see the answers right now. I don't know if the club is looking to make any real transfers. They recalled Kennedy to solve our wingback solution, and I don't know if that's enough. We're competing at the Champions League. We're competing in the FA Cup. These are all big competitions that require a level of play that is above what we can offer right now, and I don't know. I think that Thomas Tuchel has a lot on his plate, but I think that the board could do a lot to help him in terms of bringing in players that can help him, achieve the brand of football that he wants to play. Right now, the harmony of the squad is a little bit off, but at the same time, the football players that we've assembled right now do not fit the style of football that we want to play. And can we address that in January? Probably not. But can we tweak it in January? Absolutely. And I look to the board, I look to Thomas Tuchel, I look to the scouting staff to address these needs now. It's now or never, because, the alternative is, we get to the end of the year, we don't finish top four. I still think that we will. But if we don't finish top four, we don't reach our objectives. We're looking at Thomas Tuchel and we're questioning whether or not he's the manager that can take us forward. And we all know that he has the tactical acumen, the ability, the managerial nous to be at the top level at all times. It's just whether or not we can actually build a squad for him that resembles his image. And that's the crux of it right now. I think last year winning the Champions League and whatnot is kind of papered over the cracks. The ability that he's shown to get, performances out of players that we didn't think that we could get before has now left the board thinking that, we've assembled the right amount of players, the right kind of players, and we don't necessarily need to do much more because this guy has the ability to turn water to wine. And that's not necessarily the truth all the time. We definitely have to find players that are suitable to his style of play and bring them into the squad immediately, because the alternative is we fall out of contention everywhere, and then we're looking at him to whether or not he's even right for the club anymore, and we all know that he is. So that's where I'm going to leave it. I don't know what you guys think. I want to hear lots in the comments. I want to see where you guys think this club is going and what needs to be addressed, because this is an ongoing thing. This is not something that we're going to be able to address within the next week and a half. This is something that is a process this club needs to address. And it's structure. We're talking about structure. We're talking about planning. We're talking about looking at the playing squad and investing in Thomas Tuchel's idea on football. And until we do that, I just think that we're just going to continually spin our wheels, finding short-term solutions, stopgap solutions, and not looking at the bigger picture that are plaguing this club right now. But guys, I'm just going to wrap it up there. There's not going to be an outro this one. This has been a different type of video, and at the end it always stays the same. It's keep the blue flag flying high and up the Chelsea, and let's get this. Peace.